Welcome to the Fashion Translator. I'm Claire, your host. Together we explore how AI and innovation are reshaping the fashion industry through creativity, technology, and global partnership. For today's episode, I'm excited to welcome Joseph Rein, founder and CEO of LW PEARL and LW PEARL Atelier, two ventures that operates across different facets of the fashion industry. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you start by telling us more about your professional journey and what led you to create the companies?
First, Claire, thank you so much for having me today. I've been following you for some time now. I'm very excited to have spent some time with you today. Yeah, so we have two companies that I run within we call it LW PEARL Group. LW stands for Laura Weber. It's a namesake of expert embroidery designer and fashion designer that I have partnered with. So we have two companies, essentially one textile manufacturing for luxury women's wear, and then a brand that we sell internationally, both on e-commerce and retail. Mostly it's high-end or luxury, so it's we're picked up by Selfridges Group. Selfridges runs within the UK, Ireland, and the Netherlands.
Tell us a bit more about, so if we look at LW PEARL, it sits at the intersection of couture, craftsmanship, performance wear, and innovation. How would you define the core vision of the brand today?
My background is in design, right? So I went to the New School of Design, concentrated in fashion. And then I went to Yeshiva University for my MBA. So essentially, the approach that we took was, with my experience in design, we took the approach of what I've been focusing on, which was just women's wear. My personal experience, I've done, Met Gala, Metropolitan Museum Gala gowns for people like Rihanna and people like Lauren Santo Domingo, which are very prominent women within the industry of music and socialites here in New York. And what we wanted to do was translate our experience into the clothing. The line of clothing that we've done, it is lifestyle clothing. It ranges from knitwear for a nice, weekend on a resort or in Long Island, but also clothes that you can wear that also are a bit sporty, kind of like a Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren kind of sits between a bit of more sport and a bit more lifestyle. We've taken the decision making clothes that we would wear, but also that our clients would wear.
And if we think about these clothes, once you have this vision, can you walk us through how the product comes to life from the initial concept to the execution?
Yeah. I mean, from here, I'm probably going to name drop a lot of my personal experience of how we came to this. I was a director of digital solutions at a large company called Li & Fung. Li & Fung owns a lot of groups of brands. There, I was leading the implementation of 3D CAD, of how to apply 3D CAD to rendering of first prototypes. So before the clothing goes to physical, we would render them all on software. Some software is called like Clo 3D or Browseware. So at LW PEARL, we do the same thing. We use a lot of digital solutions. One is a PLM, a product lifecycle management tool, where you're actually planning to sample and produce the clothing. So it's all planning tools. There's costing and pricing tools in there. But then also there is this rendering of a design from inspiration all the way through to the pattern that would be manufactured for the clothing. So what we do mostly is we're all on our computers, collating a lot of inspirations and then bringing those down into kind of 3D software to see what's realistic from the inspiration into a real product. From your background and from what you just described, this is a very digital first approach. Tell us a bit about how you merge these two approaches. Like you have the digital first, the technology, and then when it comes to the more couture approach, this embroidery, this attention to detail, and this very artisanal component. How do they meet and how does this shape the business? I would say, even from my pedagogy or from learning in academia to reality, everything that is digital came in afterwards. Everything was very drape first, know the fabric first, know the textile first, know how that material is going to work physically on the body, on the mannequin. And then embroidery is even more that. Embroidery and hand embroidery is that even, exponentially even harder, right? Yeah. Because it's, it's everything's by stitch, everything's by hand, and it actually affects the quality of the drape of clothing. So Laura, which is the embroidery designer, what she'll do is she's been doing this embroidery design for at least 10 years. She used to manage about 50 people. She used to work with big brands like Marc Jacobs, Alexander Wang, which are more edgier brands, then also brands from the LVMH group like Gabriela Hearst. And if we go towards more of the luxury brands like from the LVMH group, what we'll do is a lot of that textile design that's jacquard or intarsia or the embroidery design, which is engineered across a lot of different parts, that's still by hand today. We still try to use a bit of Adobe Illustrator, Wilcom, which is an embroidery digitizing software, to engineer the embroidery across the garment. It's still a lot of physicality. We still have to do physical prints from physical swatches and see how things are going to flow. And moreover, if it's sequins or if it's rhinestones, a lot of these elements haven't been easily translated in AI at the moment.
Yeah, correct.
So when it has that specific shine to it or very complicated color, a lot of that doesn't translate. So you have to go through a lot of iterations of swatches, but then also try to bring that into the digital version of it. But a bit, you're still trying to sell a bit of it because it doesn't translate exactly what the physical would look like.
Mhm. So as we're discussing all of these behind the scene layers and different facets that have to come together for the product to come to life, if you were to talk to brands or entrepreneurs that are out there, from your perspective, what are some of these facets or these players that come into the business that are often overlooked and that can make the difference between if a brand succeeds or not?
My passion is design, and my passion is fashion, and my passion is everything that is digital and technology. I always look back to my education of how we learned originally, and then what are the tools that folks are using today. For a brand to be successful, we've consulted with a lot of brands. We have our own brand. We've seen a lot of emerging designers come and go. We've seen a lot of them get a lot of stardom and then crash back down. We've seen them, a lot of them, get picked up by Harper's Bazaar or by Glamour or Vogue, and it's temporary.
Yeah,
And what I see is the biggest issue is the translation of artistry or avant-garde editorial garments into more commercial garments that are realistic, that people will wear, people that you will invest in a cashmere sweater, or really invest in a bridal gown or a gown for an evening. A lot of these emerging designers that are coming out of some of these schools that have beautiful, innovative products, those just don't translate for long-term growth of a company. So merchandising line, it's what I would say is like first fashion designer needs to know the business of fashion, right? Like, not to be
yeah,
cliche, but the business of fashion is much deeper than going to a salon and seeing a lot of beautiful bridal dresses. It's much more
yeah,
than the event. The business side, I would say, is equivalent to building cars or building consumer products. You're going
yeah.
to say, okay, these products are consumable, right? People are
In the
going to
end, it's a
wear it.
business. Yeah,
Yes, people are going to wear this. It's
yeah,
not just, the one gown for the wedding. It's not just, you have to figure out how to make this a business. The business of tailoring and small shops that do bespoke, they can't really weather the hard times of the economy or
yeah,
the inconsistency or the seasonality that the demand brings. So my biggest recommendation is, compiling that education of the business, and the digital tools help you get there. You go from
absolutely.
this very creative mood board world or styling world or, movies and commercial world of imagery, but then you
Yeah,
have to convert that into a stable business that will sell product, and that product that folks will enjoy in a retained recurring fashion, right? So my
yeah,
biggest takeaway is just trying to get some grounded business in that. At the School of Parsons, there was a few courses on design one product, one look, and constrain yourself by cost. If you have that way of reverse engineering your idea
yeah,
into cost, and you're thinking about the material, you're thinking about who's going to wear this, what sizes, where, how your distribution is going to work, how you're going to actually sell this online, direct to consumer, or pre-order, or made to measure. Then you start to scale back and you start to see clothing like a bonsai tree. You have to like pare back, like, okay, there's too many things on here. Let me, take away things, or it's not commercially viable. How
Yeah.
do I streamline this in a way where I'm using the same pattern very often, or I'm using the same fabric very often? So you're being more efficient from your design to manufacturing process.
I honestly couldn't agree more. There's so much talent. There's so much talent everywhere, and with that comes great potential. But if you think about fashion, it's often described fashion is wearable art. Yes, there is an art to it, but fashion is so much more than wearable art. As you said, this entire business component, it has to be embedded in the core of the brand, or entrepreneur have to be more aware of this. And there's got to be an education that comes with the emergent talent to make sure that they really get their place in the spotlight. Because at the end of the day, like you said, like the business layer, the marketing layer, and to understand, often, especially when you're young and you're passionate, you can see these as limitation or like as restriction. But at the end of
Yeah,
the day, like you can think, like you said, the bonsai or some guidance, they're actually, you can use them as lever to create, and you could use them as building block. Okay, if this is what the state is, this is what the world is, what my target client wants, then how do I use that and make art from that to leverage these realities? Because we're not even talking, they're not constrained, they're just facts, they're realities that we have to navigate. And when you work with them instead of ignoring them, you actually can bring even your art gets further. Because us artists, we can get inspired from anything. You get even inspired from a weirdly shaped block from on your walk back home. So why not get inspired from that? We pride ourselves in getting inspired from so many things that are actually not from fashion, especially students. Like, oh, I got this inspiration from the smoke of the early morning. Then why don't you get inspired from these realities? And there's so much potential there too. And actually, this will then fuel you to create your next collection and your next gown and your
exactly.
next version.
Exactly.
There's a lot of potential even within that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the what I see is there's kind of high and low, where if you take like a company like H&M, H&M is a perfect example of high commercial. They're very, very systematic on what commercial lines that they sell. But then they'll do these really high-end collaborations,
Yeah.
with Simone Rocha or Comme des Garçons, or they'll do these celebrity kind of collaborations. So they know that their sales mix might be 90-10 or even 95-5, where 5% can be that artistry, but 95% needs to be very streamlined. But then the opposite is a Comme des Garçons that is ultra avant-garde. But if you look at their P&L, or if you look at what financials that they've shown online, not too many. They're a group, and within that group, they'll have a Converse pair of sneakers with the logo of Comme des Garçons on it,
Yeah.
and it has a high sale through, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you can do the avant-garde, you can do the artistry. It's just what percentage of the line is that, but also what does it serve? Does it serve as a marketing tool to say, hey, this is what we can do, or this is what is available at the moment?
Absolutely. And to have these different layers to broaden the business reach, it actually gives you more freedom and more resources for this avant-garde segment that is often what when you like this is what like the icing on the cake, right? The cherry on
Exactly.
top. But
Exactly.
there needs to be a cake to put the cherry on. If you just have a cherry, you don't have a cake, it's not the same. We're not talking
Exactly.
about the same game.
Totally agree.
So we spoke about LW Pearl in terms of like the brand and the clothing line. If we lean a bit more into the atelier, so
Sure.
how does that side of the business operates, and tell us more about the role. How does this fit into a broader fashion ecosystem?
Yeah, sure, sure. So first, we have the brand and we have the atelier, but basically the brand was born from the atelier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the atelier we've had now for about 7 years, and that's where our bread and butter is. And when I say bread and butter is we have the most amount of employees there, very jam-packed days of client meetings and deliveries and deadlines. And it's a high variety prototyping and sampling, right?
Hmm.
So in contrast to the brand where we're trying to sell a line for spring, summer, or for winter, or for a collaboration for the Olympics or from sporting event, the Atelier is a nonstop agency, basically,
Hmm.
right? So we have an agency model. In that agency model, we have a long list of clients that come to us. We have a website. You can see a lot of clients there, but usually they go from luxury women's wear all the way through bespoke custom menswear. Bespoke custom menswear, you'll see that a bit more for a company called Tom Brown. They're owned by Zegna. It used to be one of our larger accounts. They dress a lot of socialite women, a lot of folks in the Asian market, but a lot of sports players, right? They'll do a lot of basketball players and a lot of football players and so on. How the Atelier works is that the Atelier is known for a specific range of surface treatments and textile design. That could be rhinestones, which is two brands that we partner with that we are licensed to partner with. One is Swarovski and the other one is Preciosa, and they'll do
Okay.
a crystal stones that we would be able to programmatically or design across the clothes or across the fabric. And then we have hand embroidery. Hand embroidery is more competition with Italy, France, and India for a
Right.
lot of traditional or ethnic or classic or a bit more heraldic, almost
Yeah.
military style bullion. Laura, she graduated in fiber and in textile development. So she's an expert in this area. She trains her team in these areas. And essentially what we'll do is when we have a customer like a Tom Brown, they want to have this very sophisticated artwork across a suit.
Yeah.
What Laura and her team will do is create a lot of different samples and swatches. And we basically here in New York City or Manhattan, very fast paced. It's kind of like you're thinking that we're behind the curtain of a runway show or behind the curtain of a theater, of a
Yeah.
play. We are behind the scenes and it's very rapid, high pace. There's no really room for learning curve. So it's really more, you know what you know already, and it's
Yeah.
trying to work within that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what we'll do is we do high tempo, high fast turnover textile swatches, and that
Hmm.
can range from sequins, rhinestone, hand embroidery, even machine embroidery. Laura knows how to make the machine look like it's hand embroidered. So we
Ah.
have a lot of different programs to use that to make these specific effects, these really
Hmm.
long satin shiny kind of satin stitch on the machines, but we also do a lot of handwork with heat pressing and soldering. So it's a bit more
Okay.
like jewelry making.
Yeah.
So essentially, the Atelier has this long list of customers. We work with the creative directors. We work with the head of embroidery or raw material or product development. It's usually always the product development team, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And essentially, if they're working up to their runway show, we'll have 3 months to do rapid prototyping all the way to getting that last garment done. And we have about 10 to 15 folks every day. And then when, the season becomes like a award season or the days of the fashion shoot or the runway show, we'll bring on a lot of freelancers. And
Yeah.
those freelancers range from older women that have been doing this for 30 years to
Mm.
younger students that are, just graduated from the local colleges in design to help out through the kind of the crunch to get everything done.
I love that those young students get to work with the 30 plus. We need so much of like this is something that we don't want to lose. The expertise of these women. Like the same thing if you think about like Italian cuisine, like if you think like these recipes that have been passed down from generation, and the same thing goes for these artisan and these skills. Like what you can learn from someone that's been doing it for 30 years and that learned from the generation before. There is just certain things that you can't learn from a book or you can't learn unless you're like, and this is how you get the next generation going. Like, because also they can experience the passion, they can experience like, there's really nothing like it.
Exactly. I mean, they're practitioners. They've been doing this forever, and they're like elders. They want to have someone younger to mentor and someone to
Yes.
intern. It's a I we really love it. And what to your point is, other than myself, there's only women in the business. So we're a women-led business. Everyone
That's
is a
good.
woman. Yeah. All the artisans, all the technical designers, all the pattern makers, Laura herself, everyone's a woman. And we really try to make an investment in retaining this type of talent. Also here in the city, Manhattan is really hard to retain that talent.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
we've made a lot of investment in, a lot of these kind of small training manuals and how to kind of buddy up where someone younger is working with someone that has much more experience.
Yeah, I can really see that being a formula for success. So continuing on this topic of the atelier, you mentioned like a wide assortment of different size and different type of clients. If we take the two end of the spectrum, if we compare like the small independents to the big group, tell us a bit more about how they have like the differences that are in their approach and like how does product development and production kind of have differences.
So it's kind of circles back to what we were talking about with this, with what's digital and what's not, and what is avant-garde or not. So what we do know is from just even the data and kind of approaches of our first initial meeting to onboard a new client. Usually the younger client or the independent designer is more avant-garde. They want to make a big splash on the scene. They want to get picked up local press, or they want to, really be picked up for runway and for Fashion Week. Fashion Week is very competitive here. You have to apply. You have to be chosen by the Council of Fashion Design Association, CFDA, to show during the week to be on the calendar. So those emerging designers or those independent ones, they're really trying to go for a bit more flash and a bit more innovative. Maybe it's technology that they're using. Maybe they're molding a specific accent of a brooch or a belt that's out of 3D printed material, and they're trying to put some sort of texture onto it, and they're asking us to do so. But also they're trying to create a lot of different volumes. What's big nowadays, I'm not sure it's because of Bridgerton or because of the museum Met Galas, but it's becoming a lot more structured clothing. A lot of women's wear with a lot of corsetry, a lot of crinoline, so a lot of like big volumes. So a lot of the newer clients, the independent designers, they're looking for either a lot of volume or a lot of innovative, which is hard, right? It's very, very hard to do. So I would say they're not really designing to cost, right? They're really just designing for the true artistry. And then the way that we're working with them is from a sketch, and then we're going through and translating that sketch into reality. And then we have the larger clients, where again, they'll have digital solutions, they'll have a PLM, we'll have access to their PLM. They'll send us their design pitch, all digital already. They'll send almost kind of a digested tech pack for the first sample. We work with companies like Coach, which is of the Tapestry Group. Coach is probably the best example of excellence, right? They have the best digital solutions. They have the most structured team. It's kind of like an army, and it's many, many divisions in there. And we'll have private access to the technical role of the PLM. And within that module, we'll start going back and forth with digital iterations of the embroidery artwork or the digital version of what that looks like. And we can use AI there, right? We can use generative AI within the Adobe suite, or we'll use it within a lot of other tools. A lot of other tools now, they're really powerful to diffuse, to make beautiful, realistic, photorealistic and photo shoot realistic versions or translations of it. And so we will use both. And this is the best part of it is just we're just so amazed by the quality of the digital rendering of the lighting on the textile itself. So we'll use that with these bigger brands. The hard part is making sure that the final garment looks like what you rendered, which is kind of hard. But that's the two differences. A smaller brand will do avant-garde, not really repeatable work, but again, it's to make a big splash. And we'll do a little bit less digital. But for a bigger company like Coach or the Tapestry Group, we will use a lot of digital tools to do the iterations, and the iterations will come directly out of either Adobe Suite or one of the AI.
Okay. Since we're touching the subject of AI, which segments would you say? Because we touched a bit like image generation or organization structure or this and that. Which segment of this process, or if you think about the fashion industry, which segment would you say you see the most impact for AI to come in?
Oh, sure, yeah. So I've been working on digital solutions within the pre-production process of fashion, right? Which is your idea until your first sample and then your
Yeah.
first pre-production sample before you send it to factory to cut 10, 100, 1,000 units, right? So what I see is patterning for sure has been disrupted by 3D, right, and digital. You
Yeah.
can use all these tools and patterning for 3D, using 3D to render a garment, a jacket, a dress, everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's much faster, right? So you don't need to wait so long anymore for your first sample of clothing, because within 3D you can create libraries in there, right? But now when we talk about what this would look like on a human, it's very different. You make a big jump, right? So 3D is more like, engineering, computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
So 3D is great, but it's still for industrialization of a product. Now, the AI, what I've seen was just the most powerful is how this will fit and how it will look on an actual human, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, you can use all the 3D all you want. You can use all the computer-aided manufacturing tools you want, but it doesn't mean that it's going to fit. It doesn't mean that people are going to wear it. People even want it. So there's a lot of upfront guesswork, even though it's precise as engineering goes. So the generative AI, where you can put it on clothing, you can put it on different type of body types, you can put it on different demographics, you can put it within different environments, different weather, different lighting. That is absolutely closes the loop between an idea and the showroom. The
Yeah.
showroom where the buyer is, right? The e-commerce casual traffic that you're getting on your e-commerce and converting them quicker, right? It's not just this flat image,
No.
it's not this hard stroke, flat image of a garment. It's actually on a person, and it has real physics, it has real lighting, it has everything, has a real texture. It's just too
Yeah.
good now not to use,
Yes. Yes.
in 2018, I would say it wasn't that great, but now we're 2026, and I say it's just absolute a must to use that generative AI for everything that is ideation and removing that gap between an idea and the actual reality of, is this something that we're going to invest in to produce?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's still so new, even though like it already made so much progress, and it's still like this pace as which is improving, and we're seeing new possibilities. There's so much use that we are still yet to tap into, and so much potential, like to have even like quantity projection and to get the first feel of your consumer and response. And now with social media, you can share and get even into the forecasting when it comes to have production, and also it will learn from itself from year after each. It's learning from itself, so it's only gonna get better. It's only gonna take us further. And honestly, there's been so much that is already great, and definitely there's a lot that's coming. Just before going further into the future, if we're still taking one last look at the present, which part of your business today, which part has most of your focus?
Yeah, well, today or in the future?
Let's do today. Let's do the journey from today, and then we'll finish this on a vision for the future.
To be honest, today my main focus is on the brand. We've spent so many years on the atelier, and we don't really want to grow it inorganically. We don't want to scale it. We don't want to go private equity and scale it so much unless the atelier goes into a product line, right? It's like LW PEARL Atelier yarn, a luxury yarn from Ireland, or thread, or if we go into a bit of lifestyle, which is some home items or things like that that are inspired on the clients or the environment or the type of world that we live in, that we work in for the atelier, right? That's one thing. Like, we really don't want to push that too hard and grow to 1,000 people. It would become really unmanageable. So most of my focus is on the brand, where I can get scale. Currently, I am in in talks with a company that partners with Shopify. They're called Leap, and not to plug them, I don't work for them, but they help burgeoning brands with getting into retail, right?
Yeah.
Physical brick and mortar.
Yeah.
We've been approached by companies, plazas and malls, outdoor villages in Texas, as well as in Boston, and as well as in Ireland, to have a small store. And that's where my main focus is. We've also been approached by the airport of different Irish airlines. They would want us to be within the airport itself. My job is to figure out what's the right price, what's the right amount of volume to get there. Do we do pop-ups just for activations and brand awareness?
Yeah.
Do we partner with a lot of brands to just anchor ourselves with these prominent other brands? We love working with other brands. We're very community focused, but also we did the Olympics for Paris 2024. We've got a lot of relationships with athletes now. So we have a few of the different leagues reaching out to us. We have female-only leagues reaching out to us. We have some American leagues reaching out to us. And essentially, we would love is to have a lot of activations with athletes, have activations with these folks, do a lot of pop-up, figure out how to move from a pop-up that's very exciting and very immersive into something that's more of a lifestyle that you always go to the store ahead of the season. That's what I'm focused on at the moment. If you asked me 10 years ago if I was going to go retail, I would say never. But now it's something that it's really a focus. And I feel that we've made a good product and we have great people, and we're there with the opportunities here, and we want to take it.
In that mission, if we think about bringing your brand to retail, if there was one thing you could automate today, I give you a magic wand and then in one snap it gets automated, which aspect would it be?
Oh, the lookbook for the buyers. That would be the first one. It is so much production to go from sampling to getting all the models, getting them on location, actually having a tailor at the location, making sure the weather is on your favor. We've done lookbooks in a castle once in Ireland, and the morning you're fine. You're doing a lot of photo shoot indoors, but once you start going outdoors, you're hoping that the weather is on your side. You're paying overtime. You're paying a lot of different things. And then you have photos that come, right? And sometimes the photos don't look great, right? So then you're doing a lot of post editing on the photos, and you're saying, okay, I want this arm on this body, or I want this smile, or on this different head, or I want this head to change. And you're doing this Frankenstein process, which is very, very long. If I can have a magic wand, it would be to really automate that process of the lookbook for the buyers. And then essentially the marketing content online. So we spend a lot of time to trying to make that content online. Signature voice, signature tone, has very consistency across the content all the time, that is fresh, that is using some of the new trends, So we looked at
the algorithm and got it going.
Exactly. So we've used a company called Higgsfield AI. We find it's very strong. It's very, very great, very realistic. But what we do is we'll take some of our current assets and then we'll push it into the Higgsfield and then see if we can make it a bit more innovative from different perspectives, or a little bit more animated, a little bit more movement, but realistic. We're more of a realistic, rather than, we're not just graphic design, because there's a lot of advertisement like Nike. They're graphic design heavy, a lot of text, a lot of overlaid logos and things. We don't really have that. So it's more about the human or the clothes or the environment. So within Higgsfield, we can do a lot of that. And it's been working so far. We feel like they're a great partner. But yeah, that's would be the two areas, would basically be that lookbook for the buyers, and then the content for online.
So now if we look at the future, so we spoke about like the retails and where this is going. Tell us a bit more about your vision for the next, let's say the next 2 to 3 years. What's the next growth phase for you?
I did say a bit about it. From a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan, the atelier definitely needs to start offering products, but we want it to be more a partnership with either supply chain or raw material manufacturer in Ireland. Ireland is experiencing a lot of their wool is not being purchased. So they actually have to burn it, So we feel that might be an opportunity for us to do maybe yarn or some sort of knit collection with those mills out there. But again, that would be slow and steady. It's not something that we would, ramp up really large scale. On the brand side, we definitely want to make a portfolio of brands. We have spoken to a few private equity companies, a few venture capital companies that support fashion apparel, actually for commerce, right? Not just for the software side. And they feel like we would have a lot of growth and that we would be able to compete with a lot of the big names in the space. So right now, our current range can be more aligned with Ralph Lauren, or it can be aligned with Kith. Kith is a big brand here in New York where it's a mix of everyday clothing, but it's elevated and it has a bit of a more sport feel to it. But for us, we know that the Irish market we don't have a high penetration in the Irish market because of our prices. When we talk about prices, is something that's a very basic jacket can be $800. Something that's a little bit more, worked can be at $1,600. So what we really want to do is come down and make a brand that is within a group that can have a bit of that luxury aspects, but a bit more accessible. And a bit more accessible might be a jacket, might be a functional apparel that people would wear very often because they see the value. So we've been looking at like jackets like barboard jackets and jackets that people wear often for different types of weather conditions. So we've been thinking about that, or for winter jackets or parkas, things of that line, so that you'll see the cost of $200 or $300 and you say, okay, this is of value. I will use it many times. But again, we weren't born from sport and we weren't born from weatherwear, more like for rain or for winter. We were really born from an atelier, and our clients are, socialites or famous or celebrities that wear gowns, right? So what we really do want to do is what we know best. What we know best is clothing for women for occasions, right? If it's for an opera or for a night out or so on. So we do want to launch a brand that has dresses and suits separates. We are working on that currently. And we know for a fact that within our storytelling and within our authentic practice of caring about textiles and our love for embroidery and our love for the client, I'm sure that it will go very well. It just takes time to get there.
Yes.
But we also do need some signature pieces if it's a bag or it's a specific type of suit separate, a jacket or a pant, a wide leg pant or double-breasted jacket for a woman that's embroidered or embellished, or a really well-made artisanal bag or a clutch that shows our extreme amount of expertise in making. That would be really the goal. So for me, I have to mix the business side. I know I have to really get deeper foundation in the sports side and the commercial side so that we can then in turn go back to our roots and get that more luxury line of evening wear and occasion wear.
Well, Joseph, I see a lot of exciting things coming both for you and for the atelier and the brand. We'll make sure to keep an eye and stay connected. For the listeners who also want to stay in touch, all the links in the handle for Joseph will be in the description. Joseph, thank you so much for joining me today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today, Claire. I'm still going to stay linked with you. We're trying to figure out how to go out there to Dubai and see you. You're in the most beautiful country there is. So thank you again for your time.